Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here, and welcome back to the recast. I am joined, as always, by a possible figment of my imagination, MonstersReview.
What's up?
This week on the cast, we are also joined by Tom, also known as Tom, from the Roundtable.
Hello, everyone.
How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm just a little tired right now.
Aren't we all?
Fair enough. We are recording a little earlier. And I'll let the viewers imagine that we're recording this at like 6 a.m.
Yeah. The sun hasn't come up yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's 6 a.m. somewhere.
Yeah.
Alright, how are you, Monsters?
I'm doing good. There's been a lot of 4th of July festivities in the past few days, so those have been time-consuming and exhausting, but besides that, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Had another just very busy week. 4th of July was like a nice break, but back on the grind, back doing stuff.
Right.
So So we have a Discord. We are constantly getting new members on this Discord, so it's an ever-growing, ever-changing place. If you want to be a part of the conversation, make some comments that we're going to read during the cast. If you want to ask us a question we might use during the question of the week, or submit news to us, or just chat with us in general. We've just got some general chats going on in there. Yeah, feel free to check out our Discord. The link is in the description.
Yeah.
And speaking of that Discord, there was some fan art?
Yeah, we got some fan art in the fan art channel from Sky Phantom 3, and they basically drew us in the style of that Shout Factory Rocco's Modern Life Complete series cover, where it's Rocco sitting on a chair, and then Filbert and Heifer are behind it, and then there's like a picture of the big heads. Apparently you don't like that DVD also.
What?
I think someone mentioned that you don't like that DVD. Maybe I could be wrong.
No, I love that DVD collection.
Oh, wow.
I don't like the Shout Factory logo that plays at the start of it.
Maybe that's it. But yeah, you're Rocco, and then I'm in the place of Heifer and Filbert, and then Nintendo is up where the big heads are, and yeah, Shadow is where Spunky is.
Nintendo looks a little like a spooky ghost.
Yeah.
But it's good. I like it. Yeah, if you got fan art, definitely join our Discord server then.
Yeah.
Corrections from last week. Not really a correction, because I knew this had to exist, but there is an anime called Ping Pong.
Yeah, it's apparently about two friends that grow up together, and then when they're older, they participate in high-level ping pong competitions. And apparently it's very acclaimed, too. Like, it has a very high rating on my anime list.
That sounds like a quality anime.
Is that how anime works? Is it like the less interesting the subject matter, the better the show?
I mean, sometimes. They make anime about pretty much anything.
I'm going to make one about DVD collecting.
Oh my god.
I mean, I think there's one about, writing dictionaries.
Actually?
What?
Yeah.
Crazy. And then we also got a lot of really good Pokemon suggestions, because last week we asked for what other episodes could we do, and we got a lot of suggestions, so
right.
We're going to be set on Pokemon-themed episodes for a while. We'll definitely spread them out, but I'm excited for the next time we talk about Pokemon. I like Pokemon.
Yeah, one more thing, too, is that we were wondering what the original title of the Japanese episode was for To Thine Own Pokemon Be True, and you were right when you assumed it was just like a literary, or like a literal translation, because the rough translation of the Japanese title is Pokemon Ping Pong Competition, Do Your Best Ambipom, which is a lot less confusing than To Thine Own Pokemon Be True.
Right, which is it is a Shakespeare's quote. I think it's actually Romeo and Juliet. Now we can have a correction on the correction segment.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Now we are in the What We Watched segment, where we talk about what we watched the past week. Tom, have you watched anything interesting in the past week on YouTube, or a cartoon, or a movie, or a live-action show?
Well, fresh in my mind is Stranger Things, just because I started that last night.
Oh, no spoilers.
Yeah. As far as animation, I've been catching up on Craig of the Creek, Amphibia, and One Punch Man Season 2 just ended, so I watched that.
Oh, how is that compared to the first season?
I feel like the pacing overall and just, the climax is kind of weird. Like, it felt like they didn't go as far as you thought you were gonna go, and then they just kind of
Right.
left on a cliffhanger for next season.
Well, I heard that this one also doesn't feature Saitama as much.
Nah, but I mean, I feel like that's kind of like an anime thing, where it's like, it's the same as like how in Dragon Ball Z, Goku doesn't show up until the last second.
Right.
I see. I see Kevin's trying to get everyone to watch Craig of the Creek.
Yeah, because it's a great show.
Okay.
You'll join the cult someday.
The cult of Craig.
Yeah.
The cult
of the Creek.
Okay. Monsters, what did you watch?
I also watched Stranger Things season 3. I binge watched it, matter of fact. When the day it came out, because I mean I had a lot of other things that I probably should have been doing, but I've been waiting on this for 2 years, and I've been like a huge fan of the show since day one. It's probably my favorite show on TV right now. Well, it's not even on TV; it's on Netflix, but you know what I mean. But yeah, I love Stranger Things, and I was anticipating season 3 very much. And yeah, I won't really talk about anything too important or spoil anything at all, really, because it's only been out for about a week.
Did it live up to the hype?
Oh yeah, and I think it definitely lived up to the hype, and I think it delivered more than I was expecting. If you don't know what Stranger Things is, it's basically just like a big love letter to the 80s. So there's like, there's all these references, and it's very much in the style of something like The Goonies or like Stephen King stuff or E.T. even. And just kind of like the general synopsis is that there's these supernatural occurrences that are happening in this small town in Indiana. And in the first season, there's like a boy that goes missing. Then in the second season, there's some more mysterious stuff that happens. And then in the third season, there's more mysterious stuff that happens. But honestly, I think season 3 is the best season. If I had to rank the seasons, it'd probably be season 3 at the top, and then season 1, and then season 2. Season 2 had an episode that I really wasn't fond of, and overall it just felt like, I don't know, the stakes maybe weren't as high.
I didn't actually make it through all the way season 2.
Really?
Not because it was like horrendously bad, but I just kind of lost interest.
Yeah, I could see that. I felt the same way. And with binge watching this, I feel like season 3 it might be the most binge watchable season, because for most of the season, I was on the edge of my seat for pretty much the whole thing, except for the first 2 episodes, which are mostly just like, exposition and setting up all the plot threads. But they're able to juggle like 5 different subplots, all with different characters. Like, obviously later on they're going to interconnect, but the fact that they're able to just keep you interested in like 5 different stories that are happening at the same time is insane.
That was one of the impressive things about season 1. It kind of had like this Twin Peaks, not in terms of like the way they tell the story, but in terms of the way they bounce from character to character. Because Twin Peaks is a show that like there's just a lot of characters, and a lot of them get a lot of focus. Stranger Things is kind of like the same way, where it's like the kids, the teenagers, the adults, and then even among the adults, there's like the cop guy, and then the moms, and like all sorts of characters.
Yeah, and I'd say that this is definitely the most 80s season, because most of it takes place in a mall. And they bring in like elements of the Cold War, and they really bring the references.
I heard Weird Al gets referenced quite a bit.
Yes, he does. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of references and homages. I'd say more so than any of the other seasons. And it's not like, at some points it can be on the nose, especially like there's a time when the characters walk into a movie theater and it's like, oh, of course you're going to show that movie. But like, I don't think it's obnoxious. Like, I don't think it's nostalgia baiting or anything. Because, I mean, for someone like me, I wasn't alive in the 80s, so I don't really have nostalgia for a lot of the things that these characters are experiencing. Maybe in some capacity, but, like, it's still really interesting. And just some of the things I love about the season are that they often do this thing where they'll make you forget, like, they'll establish something early on, and then all of this other miscellaneous stuff will happen, and just by the end, like, you'll completely forget that they set up these things. And then when you're not expecting it, they'll bring them back, and it'll surprise you. And those just feel so rewarding.
Chekhov's gun.
Also, some of the transitions from scene to scene are really, really creative. Like, I don't know, let's say that there's a scene involving, like, a fight or something, and there's a certain weapon. They'll just find a really creative or inventive way, either using the music or having, like, a similar item and they'll like do a close up on it and push out. Just like a lot of the scene transitions are really creative, and a lot of the transitions from the music being like on the radio to being non-diegetic, that sort of stuff. I found that really interesting. Also, just one of the most important things too, and a lot of people might not be a fan of this, but I think it's really important, is that the season left me with a lot of questions. I've mentioned it to other people. I also kind of agree that I could see this technically being the last season of the show if they weren't already planning a season 4. But even if they were planning a season 4, and even if this was the final season, I really appreciate that it leaves me asking a lot of questions, because it keeps me invested. I want to learn more. I want to watch more. And with something like Endgame, as much as I loved it, I don't really have too much of a desire to watch any more of the MCU. I know a lot of people don't feel that way,
to be
but
a grand finale.
Yeah, I kind of do. But like, no, Stranger Things does such a good job of keeping the viewer invested and hooked. So I very much recommend this show if you have Netflix, because, like I mentioned before, it's probably my favorite thing to watch, and it's a lot of fun. It's scary, and it's also very 80s.
Is it very scary?
I don't know if I'd say very scary. So what'd you watch?
Not much, to be honest. I had another just really busy week, but I did watch half of a Drake and Josh episode.
Ooh, which one?
Josh runs into Oprah.
Oh, did you stop watching after Josh hits her?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of the episode is kind of like a little boring, but
I don't know, man. I wasn't really digging it. And I found that
Wow.
sad, because I really wanted to enjoy some Drake and Josh, especially after all you've been talking it up. I watched it, and I'm like, ooh.
I'll admit it's not the strongest episode.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am glad that you stopped watching there too, because like after she gets hit and she gets taken to the hospital, it's just like Drake and Josh in a hallway right outside of their room trying to barge in, and then she has these 2 buff security guards, and they keep like tasing them or something.
Classic comedy.
But I'm assuming you also watched the parts where like Drake completely forgot that it was Josh's birthday, because he has a birthday party, but it's for a girl that he likes, and then he manages to snag him some Oprah tickets, and then you know what happens after that.
For some reason, Helen's line about having nostropecia has always stuck with me.
Nostropecia?
Nostropecia. Because she says she gets Josh a nose hair trimmer, and then she's just chatting with Drake's girlfriend about how she just doesn't have any nose hair, so she doesn't need one.
Yeah.
It's stuck with me all these years, and I could not tell you why.
That's something you recognized when you were a kid?
What do you mean? It's not a real thing.
Oh, it's not? Oh.
No, alopecia is when you're like hairless.
Right.
So nostropecia, I don't believe it's a real thing.
Don't
and if
judge.
it is, it's not. I mean, it's not like a condition or anything. You can live without nose hair, I assume. Well, maybe not. I don't know. But it's not just like come dripping out your nose.
Yeah. Oh
Okay.
man. Cool.
Well. All right, so that's what I watched, but since I didn't have anything really that interesting to bring to the table this week, instead I have a little story.
Okay.
On YouTube, you have in the about section your business email that you put down, and that's basically how people can contact you if they have any like serious concerns, or if they're upset that you use the word literally too many times. So I kind of forgot that I set up a separate email just for that, and then never added it to my phone.
Wow.
Or I didn't add it to my phone when I switched phones or whatever. But basically, there's about like 2 or 3 years of messages that people have been sending me that I had not seen until last week. So, yeah, all those amazing sponsorships the recast could have had out the window. No, it was a lot of junk, a lot of spam, some sponsorship type stuff that I never would have taken anyway. So not a huge loss, but I do feel bad for the fans that like wrote me, and only now am I just getting to write back to you guys. The best way to contact me has always been to just tweet at me. But anyway, in the course of finding this email, I found a lot of like first communications I had with other YouTubers, because 3-ish years ago, it's like I wasn't using Discord at least.
Nah, I used to use Skype before Discord, and I think you were
Yeah.
using Google Hangouts.
I was using Skype. I used Google Hangouts for calls, but not for like social networking.
Right.
At any rate, I found the first contact that I had with Monsters Review.
And what date was this? January?
January 31st, 2016 at 3:02 p.m.
Wow, that's such a me time.
Yeah, well, I mean that's basically literally 2.5 years ago. Or sorry,
Yeah, 3.5.
3.5. Sorry, 3.5 years ago.
Wow.
Okay, so you wrote me,
Right.
and I feel like we may have had maybe we had like a YouTube comments or something. Like I commented on one of your videos or something.
Right.
Like there might have been some sort of
Like an inciting incident.
Right. Very like loose messaging, but this was definitely the first time we'd actually like talk. And you wrote, "Hello, my name is blank, better known as Monsters Review. And like yourself, I run a YouTube channel that is cartoon related. I'm approaching 3,000 subscribers."
Wow.
"And I make videos about news in the animation industry as well as reviews and top 10s.
I'm so glad I shifted away from that. Anyway.
Anyways, because you never talk about news now. Anyways, I have a podcast that I post every 2 weeks where the special guest and I talk about recent news in the animation industry, have in-depth discussions about certain topics, look at upcoming premieres and schedules, and answer questions in a Q&A style segment from fans.
Wow.
Would you like to be the special guest for the upcoming podcast? It would take about an hour of your time, and I'd be willing to record it at a time catered to your schedule." You were very good at writing.
Thanks.
This is
Yeah, notice how I
professional
put the
email.
word special in front of guest too.
Oh, thanks.
The special guest.
I also have the capability of streaming it if you would prefer to do it that way. The topics I want to focus on for this podcast, ready for a blast from the past? YouTube content ID. Well, that's
still
going on.
ongoing issue. Yeah.
Okay, but the new Justice League animated series, I guess
Justice League Action, I think. Yeah.
Which is like over now. And the upcoming Avengers style Nicktoon movie.
Which was just a rumor and never actually happened.
Yep. Also, here's my channel if you'd like to see some of my work. Thank you for your time, Monsters Review.
Wow.
Yeah. Basically. Now we have a beautiful podcast together.
Yeah.
No, it's funny that the first time you messaged me was to go on your podcast, and that you talked about questions and animation news and in-depth discussions.
Right. Well, the funny thing is too that actually never happened. Like,
yeah,
I messaged you about that, and I think you were like busy or something. But then like later you hit me up and were like, "Hey, I want to do this Adventure Time discussion," and I was like, "Wow, I haven't seen season 6 yet." So then I watched like half of season 6 in a day, and then I hopped on your discussion, and then we made a video about fandoms, I think.
Yeah, we did on your channel. It's crazy.
But that was like later on that year. That was in like October of 2016 or something.
Right. I did respond, but I don't have that pulled up right now. So maybe next week you'll get to hear my first message to you, Monsters.
Right.
I'll tease that for next week then. Hopefully it's like juicy, and I'm like, I don't want to be on your crappy podcast. Podcasts are for dorks. I didn't see. That's the thing. I didn't actually like. I saw this and I'm like, oh, I gotta screen cap this and show Monsters. But I didn't actually look at what I responded with. There's like a chain of like 4 emails. So
that'll have to be a recurring segment. Like every time we bring a guest back, you have to like read your first email with them.
Well, I don't have any first email. Well, I have one with Nick. I can embarrass Nintendo, but I won't do that now.
If he's listening.
You responded with, "If I ever do a podcast, kill me."
Oh no. Okay. So, this is the part of the show where ordinarily we'd be talking about news, but there really wasn't much news, and the news that did come out, like Monsters and I didn't have anything to say about it, to be honest. So, moving along, we have a question of the week from Sammy over on the Discord server. What is the greatest, funniest animation error you've seen?
Any takers?
I
I don't know if it's an error, but I recently saw forward-facing Mabel, and that from Gravity Falls. Because they don't, a lot of like forward-facing characters on that show are like actually 3/4 shots.
Right.
But yeah, no, that's a cursed image. Never look Mabel directly in the face. One that sticks out to me as well is in SpongeBob, actually, in Something Smells. He says "high building" twice. He's supposed to say something else. Sorry. He says "I just don't get it" twice when he's supposed to say "high building," and that's an error that's maintained on the DVD.
Wow.
I know, deep stuff. I don't know if I have. I mean, there's a lot of also early Simpsons stuff that has these like really wild animation errors.
Yeah. And sometimes just background stuff in The Simpsons from early on where it was just like, you could tell they were like, eh.
Yeah. Yeah. Not an error, just someone not really caring.
Yeah, they're just like, we just want to put it together.
Right.
How about you, Monsters? Mr. DVD King.
Well, I mean, in similarity to DVDs, but not really. I apologize. I have to bring this up. Camp Lazlo.
No, it's fine. As long as you're talking about flaws in the show, I'm good.
Oh my god.
Please tell me how bad the
in
animation
an otherwise
was in that
perfect show, there are animation errors relatively often. You know, I don't know. When I watch TV, and I think this also went for me as a kid, sometimes I don't notice this stuff. Sometimes it just like passes by, or sometimes I don't even care that it's an error. But the one that I remember the most is there's an episode called Racing Slicks where it's like where they do a racing derby, and they have to build their own race cars, and basically the Bean Scouts are doing all this, but the Jelly Scouts are helping Slinkman make one because like that's Slinkman's dream is to have like his own race car. But there's a shot where they're at the top of the hill and they're about to go down and start racing, and it's kind of like a panning wide shot, and they show Edward, but Edward has Laszlo's skin color, so like Edward is completely orange, and he's not like the tan beige that he usually is. So that's like a really funny error.
Those kind of coloring errors don't happen quite as much. At least not like big ones.
Well, it's quite noticeable too.
I mean, you can fix them relatively easily compared to previously.
Right.
And of course, if talking about animation errors, I gotta bring up the Powerpuff Girls.
I thought you were gonna say Steven Universe.
No.
I mean, that's not really animation errors. That's just more off-model.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is. It's just a lot of people I see on Twitter are talking about the art and certain things that are off about it.
From what I understand, it's mainly just a rough draft. Like their studio, like when they send it off to animate, they don't really do it as on model as it should be.
I think they were the same people who actually did Camp Lazlo.
I mean, they do a lot of stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, there's a lot of errors in both the original Powerpuff Girls and in the reboot. To the original's credit, it's like it wasn't as big a production as cartoons are. Like I don't know. I feel like it because it was like old style, traditionally animated. There was a lot more moving pieces and parts, so they had to get a lot more right. But there is one part where I think Bubbles says one of Buttercup's lines. Like it got pretty weird sometimes. And then of course the reboot has a ton of things. My favorite being that time that there was a bunch of like flashing lights just for no reason in one of the Subna episodes. So that's always good.
Yeah, I remember that was such a big thing when the reboot had just come out and everyone was like uploading reviews of it and talking about how trashy it was, and just all those pictures were going up on Twitter of all the really bad animation and art.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's like on the one hand, it doesn't matter that much, but it's just kind of like indicative of, I don't want to say laziness, but it's indicative of something that maybe isn't getting as much attention as it should. And a lot of times this sort of thing it's inescapable and it's unfixable without a lot of money. But
well, like you mentioned too, like with traditional animation, and they have to take pictures of each individual frame, but like when it's digital, you can just kind of like use a paint bucket tool, and all of this stuff is saved in digital files, so it's a lot easier to fix.
Still takes time, but yeah, no, it's
right.
Doable. And of course, We mentioned Simpsons earlier, but Smithers being African American in his first appearance.
That happened?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's something.
And people are mad about Apu.
Oh my god. Well, but that was I believe that was a mistake. I don't think that was ever the intention.
Mm-hmm.
So he looked the exact same, except he was African American?
Yeah.
Google it.
Wow.
Well, I don't think they intended for him to be African American. He just had that skin tone. But as you could imagine, him being like a servant to Mr. Burns probably maybe wouldn't have read correctly.
I don't know if this is in the show or if this is just merch, but don't people get the color of Bart's shirt wrong a lot?
That's like a bootleg thing.
Okay.
Cool.
So, next week on the recast, as we've been hinting and mentioning, Truth or Square versus SpongeBob's Birthday Blowout. The 10th anniversary special and the 20th anniversary are going to face off.
They're gonna face off and tell me who Bob what pants is the best episode.
Listen, I'm sure everyone already knows my opinion on Truth or Square, and I doubt that's gonna change with like 3 years time. Maybe it will. Maybe I won't feel as strongly about it, but I don't think there's a planet where I watch Truth or Square and I'm like, yeah, you know what, this was good. I don't even think on Planet Sheen that would make sense.
Right.
But SpongeBob's Birthday Blowout is like not out at the time of this recording, so I have no idea. Like the concept is that SpongeBob gang are gonna like meet their live action counterparts, and it's gonna be all the voice actors playing versions of them above land. It's a pretty insane concept.
Yeah, it seems a lot more ambitious than Truth or Square.
What? You don't think it's ambitious to put Tom Kenny in a patchy suit and throw a celebrity guest and make him like walk through the back lot of Nickelodeon?
Well, predictions, do you think we're going to see Pieguy again? I'd assume we will, but
I don't know. It might be too much because there's already going to be a heavy live action component. SpongeBob's Birthday Blowout could be anything. So tune in next week. We had a great guest lined up and it's going to be something.
It'll be something, yep.
All right, so we are going to go on our break, and we will be right back. And we are back to talk about Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. So we're going to be comparing the episodes Very Scary and Everyone Knows It's Bendy. These episodes are, I would say, pretty similar.
Yeah, very similar, actually.
Even like to the fact that their designs are not they're not like alike, but they're not dissimilar. Like they're both primarily one color. They've got kind of like the spiky little hair thing going on.
They like doing puppy eyes.
The big eyes. Yeah. yeah. All right, so Very Scary is an episode from Foster Season 1 in which a new imaginary friend comes to the house and she acts all sweet and she gets this just huge crush on Blue and wants to monopolize his attention. And then when anyone else takes his attention for a second, she freaks out and basically she just like enacts this revenge fantasy on Mac and cuts him out of friendship with Blue, and then Mac gets his friendship back with Blue.
Yep.
What did you guys think of this episode?
Personally, I'm not a fan. I mean, I think that there were some interesting elements. Like, I think some of the comedy was funny, but overall, I'd say this is definitely one of the weaker episodes of the show, because I think you're supposed to feel sympathy for like Mac or Blue even, and a lot of people have this gripe against Blue, and I didn't understand it for a long time, because when I was watching the show as a kid, like I was like, what's your guys' problem with Blue? He's just like, yeah, he's a jerk, but that's his whole thing. But after watching these two episodes, I know that they're two like of the generally considered worst episodes, but like, man, Blue is a lot worse than I remember him being.
And mind you, Very Scary is season 1. Very Scary is season 1.
Yeah, his ego is very intolerable.
Honestly, I felt like in Very Scary, Blue was a bit more tolerable than usual.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that statement, to be honest, because at least here he's more apathetic to everything than outright, like, malicious, because he's not the selfish character. Okay, but here's the thing, like, Very Scary, I feel like someone had the idea that was like, let's do this, like, love story, this essentially a love triangle is what it is, but in friendship terms, I guess, but let's have the party that both characters want to like hang out with just be not just apathetic and doesn't care. Like, because the whole idea is that Blue cuts Mac out because Barry's like, oh, well, he's getting in the way. But Blue just like, he's so passive in this entire episode that I just don't care. I guess that's my issue with it.
You almost feel bad for Blue.
Well, in some ways too, it's also like, and I don't even know if this is within the context of the episode, but just overall, like, watching Blue again made me reevaluate, like, why does Mac keep showing up at Foster's every afternoon and like coming back to see Blue when he's such a jerk?
I mean, it almost feels like he wants to come and see everyone else, and Blue's just kind of there.
Yeah, that seems about right. But no, I don't know. I found the fact that Blue didn't care. Like, it's a kind of funny joke, like the fact that he can't remember her name and all that. But it just kind of makes me detached from the episode, because if Blue doesn't care about what's going on, then why do I care about what's going on?
Why do girls always go for the jerks?
Yeah.
Those jerks playing paddleball.
Yeah. I mean, the world record thing is like a cool angle. Although I question the validity of like using your imaginary friend to help you reach this, because couldn't you just like imagine up a friend that's really good at stuff?
Couldn't they just have Coco like spawn an egg that has the world's largest rubber band ball?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Wilt could help break like a lot of records.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
So I don't know. I always kind of found that a little weird, but it is what it is.
And Frankie yet again seems for the most part to have like a fairly sympathetic angle.
What do you mean?
Just like, you know, there's
sympathetic to her, or
well, no, there's the new imaginary friend that comes in, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you know, come right in." Very caring.
And then she was trying to wingman for
her. Yeah. What about the Young and the Restless parody? I think that's kind of the thing that stands out to me the most in the episode, actually.
I know nothing about the Young and the Restless.
Yeah, I mean, I know soaps in general. I didn't know directly what it was spoofing, but I thought it was pretty funny, like kind of obvious but funny when Terrence was like hooked on it.
Yeah, I thought it made for some good gags. I thought it was like a good use of a running gag, essentially.
And another thing this episode reminded me too is just I guess the term I'd use is world building, but like I almost have a mental image of like how Foster's is mapped out in terms of just the interior of the house and all of the different rooms, and it's kind of amazing how they plotted this whole thing together, and how it's like an important element of the show, and there's so many recognizable locations.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think they actually plotted out a map of the house. I think they just have a bunch of rooms.
Oh, speaking of animation errors, I noticed there's like a weird perspective thing when they were playing checkers.
Oh?
Like there was a scene where like they were playing checkers, and then like they were all like looking over at Blue and Barry, and like I noticed like the board was just like really weirdly contorted for certain shots.
When Blue was eating, I think there was like a piece of food that like I think there was a piece of food that was attached to his mouth animation that kept popping up like on his body. Looked a little weird. But I mean, overall, Foster's is such a great like looking show. I still cannot believe that it's made in Flash.
I know.
I mean, it really just goes to show that like, look, if you put the time into like really good character design and you make the effort with it, like it can look fantastic. It doesn't have to look like Johnny Test.
Yeah, that's true. The parts of the episode I found funny were with the music, when there was just like people walking by that had like a radio or whatever, you just like turn it off. And then also I don't remember exactly like where the joke came from, but Blue was making comparisons. He was like the peanut butter to my jelly, and then like the two imaginary friends popped out of the stalls making more comparisons, like the salt to your pepper.
I don't know. I found a lot of the humor in this episode to be more charming than actually funny, to be honest. I don't know if it's just because I saw Foster's a lot as a kid, or if it's just I don't think it's like the best humor, but it's definitely charming. Like I don't know. I think charming describes the show a lot, which is why Blue is such a weird like outlier, because characters like Eduardo, Wilt, and Coco are all they're very nice characters generally.
They're very likable.
Right. I mean, Coco can be a little bit like wild, but she's very rarely mean, and Wilt's like never mean, and Eduardo's basically never mean. And so I understand that Blue kind of like rounds out the cast, but it's kind of weird that you have this show where like everyone is so friendly and likable, and then one of the main characters is just a really selfish, obnoxious jerk that steals the show.
Right. That's the thing. And like in some situations those can work where it's like the protagonist is an anti-hero who you have sympathy for, but also does like a lot of bad. But Blue is just straight up unlikable.
I mean, I agree with Tom in that this is probably one of his better appearances. Blue insulting Barry by not caring is probably like nicer than he gets most of the time. A lot of the time he just outright insults people.
Right.
Well, that's why episodes like Destination Imagination are my favorite, because they're very, very little focus on Blue. All right, we can move on to Bendy, because a lot of the stuff I have to say about Barry are comparison type stuff. So,
right.
Everyone Knows It's Bendy is an episode where a new imaginary friend shows up at the house, and the family that owns him tells Frankie and Mr. Harriman that, well, Bendy did all these bad things, and Frankie and Mr. Harriman think that it was actually the kid that did the bad things. And Bendy goes around the house doing a bunch of bad things, and Mr. Harriman and Frankie choose to believe him over the people that they've known for years.
Yeah.
Like about 20 different times. So firstly to note is just that this is I think it's like a 12-minute episode. I don't even think it's 11 minutes. It's a little longer than 11, but it's not the 22 minutes that Barry was.
Or most Foster's episodes in general.
Right, but Bendy certainly feels like a long episode.
Yeah. It's definitely one of my least favorite.
Yeah, I mean, that's very understandable. A lot of people really don't like this episode, and I can definitely see why. Like, it kind of just hits the same point again and again, and although sometimes they give Frankie and Mr. Harriman, like, good reason to not believe the characters, a lot of the things are really just kind of like, okay, I get why you wouldn't believe Blue, but Wilt's gonna lie to you. I mean, there's been episodes where Wilt lies, but like, it's a huge thing for him to have to do that.
Like, the first time something happens, like, literally everyone's like, nah, it was that dude, and they're like, really?
Yeah. Also, you gotta love Mr. Harriman and Frankie running into the room assuming someone intentionally broke that, instead of just like it fell off the TV or something. Like, they come in and they're ready to blame someone. Blue is actually not bad in this episode at all, but I guess they had to do that because...
I don't know about that.
Well, what do you mean?
Like, not even that, like, he's a awful person or anything, but he's just dumb.
Oh, yeah. Well, I wasn't infuriated by his actions in the episode, at least.
I was just, like, frustrated watching. Like, when they were setting up the thing to take a picture of him breaking the window, and then Blue just walks in and then grabs the bat, and it's like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are you trying to do? Of course it's gonna look like you did it now.
That was the biggest thing. Like, they kept picking up items after they were done committing the crime.
Well, that's the thing. In order for an episode like this to work, you do kind of have to dumb down all the characters.
Right.
Which they do.
Yes.
Like, Mr. Harriman is pretty dumb. Frankie's pretty dumb. I get falling for Bendy maybe once or twice, but just kind of like to the extent where they don't even want to investigate, that it's just like well, he said, she said, and that's what we're leaving it.
This episode really puts the concept of innocent until guilty to the test.
I'm glad Mac wasn't in this episode, because to see them not believe Mac too would be...
Oh my god.
Would be dumb.
Yeah.
Well, so, okay, in comparison to Barry Scary, Everyone Knows It's Bendy is not like as complete a story, in the sense that he just kind of shows up and we get a little bit of backstory. Like, we kind of get the setup from the parents that are leaving him. But then it's just thing after thing of Bendy doing bad things. Like, Blue tries to catch him, but that's about it. And then the episode ends with him being just no resolution.
It kind of just feels like a short.
Yeah, the ending is not good.
Yeah, I would have said that this, like, maybe as a 7-minute episode would work a lot better than a 12-minute episode.
Right.
If you were writing this episode, where would you take it? Like, let's say the ending of the episode as it stands is the halfway marker. What would you have in the second half?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. Where do you take this story is the thing. That's a good question.
You don't really have a lot to work with here.
Right, because it's like, well, either Frankie and Mr. Harriman believe or don't believe. I mean, I guess you could escalate the situation by having Frankie believe Blue and the gang and having Bendy frame Frankie, and then Mr. Harriman doesn't believe her, I guess, but then that's still just more of the same.
Right.
It is just kind of a one-note thing. Now, Very Scary is also kind of one-note in the sense that it's the same sort of thing where, yes, there's more stuff going on in terms of the world record, in terms of like the soap opera parody, in terms of there's an ending. But it does kind of do the same thing where it's like, it's just a lot of, there's multiple scenes of Barry like looking at Blue doing something in slow motion. There's multiple scenes of her like wrecking Mac's day. It just kind of hits the same thing over and over. And although it does have an ending, it's a kind of a cop-out in my opinion, because it's basically Barry's like, you should ditch Mac, and Blue's like, okay. And then he's like, go home, Mac. And then Mac's just like, wait a minute, I shouldn't go home, I should go back. That's like it. That's the big revelation. Like, because
and
Blue
then she
is so
also gets a world record of her own.
right. Because Blue is so uninvested in the storyline that he just kind of shrugs when Mac leaves and he shrugs when Mac comes back.
And then the public perception of Barry just kind of flips out of nowhere.
Yeah, basically. But at least that wasn't really played up in Very Scary. Like, I guess if I had to say it, I mean, Everyone Knows It's Bendy is a more frustrating episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
At least with Very Scary, there's like a setup and a resolution. With Bendy, it's just kind of the same.
Right, and it's not that like, it's like Barry is doing like googly eyes with Frankie and stuff. Like, she is doing the puppy dog thing, but it's not really as big a deal. Like, it's not that important to the episode that people. It's not like Max running around trying to get people to believe him and no one believes him.
Right.
Because so many stories in general are just based on that idea of like, it's someone is lying and then someone else knows, but no one believes it. So it's just kind of one of those things where if you're going to do that kind of story, you really have to put something into it. And they don't. Like, it doesn't make it a complete episode, but I like the ending of Everyone Knows It's Bendy. I think it is kind of funny that Blue goes through these great lengths to frame Bendy and then is just so stupid as to just admit that he did all this stuff. And he's so focused on getting Bendy.
And then Frankie and Mr. Harriman for the first time in the episode actually makes sense.
Yeah, basically. I feel like you could do an episode of Everyone Knows It's Bendy where Blue and Bendy have some sort of like competition.
Bromance.
Yeah, Very Scary, but it's Bendy. It's just, I don't know, where they team up or something. Like, if you want a much better episode of Foster's where it's about like a similar concept of like lying to cover up things, go with Busted. The Bust episode.
There actually is like there's a few Mac and Blue competition episodes, but they're nothing to rave about from what I remember. Like I think there's one where they both try to make like a viral video or something, or they both try to make like they both try to win like a race or something. I don't remember.
What does that have to do with?
Oh, just in terms of competition episodes.
Okay.
That's completely off topic. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So we've got some viewer comments. One from Kirby over yonder who says, "I'm not a big fan of Foster's. I don't think it's a bad show by any means, but I just find Blue to be incredibly obnoxious to the point where he kind of ruined the show for me. I find him to be pretty insufferable in the beginning of Very Scary. Watching him annoy everyone else and interrupt their soap opera is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, very annoying. That being said, I pretty much like anything after Barry is introduced. I think Barry is a pretty funny character, and I like how her obsession gets more and more intense as the episode goes on. I also think Frankie is pretty likable in this episode, and Blue gets less annoying as it goes on. As for the Bendy episode, yeah, this one is about as bad as people make it out to be. Bendy is just so obnoxious. There's nothing fun about watching a character be a jerk. Plus, the episode makes Frankie and Harriman look really stupid. The episode would have been alright if Bendy was punished at the end, but as it is, it's a miserable episode to sit through and completely deserves the hate it gets. I think Very Scary is a better episode." And this is coming from someone who has the username Over Yonder, so presumably is a fan of Craig's other work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with basically everything said here.
Yeah.
Did you see the other comment?
Well, I did, but would you like to read it?
Sure. A guy named Crystal says, "As someone who's the least familiar with Foster's Home out of Craig McCracken's 3 shows, so I guess similar perspective, and these being the only 2 episodes I've seen from the show, That's a bad impression. I wasn't really impressed with either. I found Barry Scary to be the worst of the two, as I felt it was really boring. I could tell what was going to happen as soon as Mac was introduced to Barry, and while I could forgive it if I found the episode funny, I didn't. With the exception of the soap opera the characters were watching, I felt most of the jokes were either too dull or too repeated too much for me to find them funny. I also didn't like Blue, Barry, or Mac in the episode, so I couldn't get engaged into what was happening. I actually like the concept of everyone knows it's Bendy, but the execution of said concept isn't all that great. I think the worst part is how quick to believe Frankie and Mr. Harriman are towards Bendy. If they started out suspicious of what the other imaginary friends said he did, and over time they sided more and more with him, then I'd buy it. And yes, I do think their attitude in the ending kind of ruins the episode, but I actually kind of like the comedy a lot better than in Barry Scary. And since I found that episode to be boring all the way through, I'd actually prefer the Bendy episode to it, even though I didn't think either were really good.
Very interesting perspectives.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that is the thing. That's one of the go-tos that I have, where if I kind of dislike two things equally, if it's a shorter episode, I'm going to pick that one. Not saying I dislike these equally. I'm still trying to figure out my complete opinions.
I mean, they both hit on a lot of the same beats. Both of them have an unlikable character that tries to pose themselves as harmless. They have a montage where the unlikable character does a lot of bad things. The end of it involves the character being preyed upon to attempt revenge.
Don't forget that both of them involve paddleball.
Yeah, and paddleball.
That was just like a weird coincidence that the second episode, Blue mentions paddleball.
Why, that's the favorite thing of Blueguard Q Kazoo.
I thought Blue didn't even... Blue's the counter, though. I don't know why it suddenly turned into him liking paddleball.
Blue just likes everything at this point.
I mean, I do like that fact that I think that was a funny joke in Barry Scary, where, like, he's just, like, he's so pumped up to do this, but he's not going to be he's just counting. He's, like, he's so proud and he's so egotistical about being the counter.
He's got to do a training montage.
Yep. I mean, to be fair, counting paddleball, like, that's not the easiest thing in the world. That goes fast, so...
Well, I also found some humor, too, in that just, like, Blue was doing whatever. Like, he was screwing around with a paddle ball, or he's just, like, eating obnoxiously, but Barry finds that to be extremely attractive.
Yeah.
That can be how it be.
Regardless of how you feel about Barry as a character, she is definitely a lot more of a character than Bendy is. Bendy is not... He's not a character. He doesn't have any motivations. He doesn't even have much dialogue in the episode, to be honest. Like,
no.
Like, the episode really could have used of an exchange of, like, Blue's like, why are you like this? And, you know, even if it was just like, I was just made this way. Like, a line just, like, acknowledging or explaining or anything into Bendy's character would have gone further into making this a more interesting episode.
Yeah. That's what a second half could do. Like, you could, like, have Matt come in and be like, well, why is he like this? And they're like, we didn't ask. So then they, like, confront him and then have, like, a heart-to-heart.
And then he does actually have a tragic backstory. It just has nothing to do with being blamed.
Well, that's the thing, because, like, a lot of the time when you look at the creation of these imaginary friends, oftentimes it's to help their creator in some way. Whether it be, like, having an extra person to talk to, or... if this person has some sort of weakness or disability, the imaginary friend is created to help them and assist them with that. So I wonder what could have been going through that kid's head in creating Bendy.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They don't really deal with it. Like, the kid's just there and he doesn't say anything. And it kind of, I guess it leaves it up to the imagination as to whether the kid was, like, a bad seed as well. Because, like, I mean, obviously the episode is saying that Bendy does bad things, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, if an imaginary friend is some level of extension of what that kid needs, then is that kid a troublemaker? Or maybe it's just that he doesn't ever speak up for himself, and so Bendy was created as a way to give him attention. I like that interpretation. I'm going to use it. But yeah, no, I mean, there's interesting ways they could have taken it, but instead it is really just the most bare bones of bare bones. Liar, liar, liar. Characters don't believe. Innocent characters get in trouble. And like I said, I did kind of get some flashbacks to the Bust episode, which is much, much better. Like, where Blue's doing bad things to try to atone for another bad thing. Like, that's kind of what this is, but not as interesting.
I think the motivation really is what separates the two, because while Bendy had no motivation, you at least understood the character of Barry a lot more.
Yes, very true. Even if it is the base motivation of, like, just love or whatever. And Barry as a character just is definitely more interesting. Her rage moments are something. I guess just in terms of picking the better episode, I think Barry Scary is not by a ton, but just in the fact that it doesn't hit on the same note as hard as Bendy does, and Barry is a lot more of a character. I still don't think it's a very good episode at all. I could see why people like it. Like I said, I found the jokes to be more charming, but maybe if I found them to be more like gut-bustingly really funny, I would love this episode. But as it stands, Bendy is a pretty dang bad episode. It's no wonder why the creator apparently disowned it. How about you, Monsters?
I'll have to agree with you. I think Barry Scary is the much better episode. I really can't stand Bendy. I remember really disliking that episode as a kid. I still very much dislike it to this day. I guess I'll have to go back sometime and look through some episodes of Foster's I genuinely enjoyed, because both of these leave me with a bad taste in my mouth.
Fair. How about you, Tom?
Yeah, these are definitely like two low points for the show, and doesn't really do a good job of reflecting the quality that Foster's is capable of.
Which one do you think is worse?
Definitely Bendy. Just because it's like the Barry one has like kind of ups and downs, but Bendy is just straight garbage throughout.
That's very fair. Barry has other things to distract you as well. Like
yeah.
Okay. What episodes would you recommend of Foster's?
I never remember names, honestly.
What stories?
God, it's been so long since I've actually watched the show, but like
That's fair. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, like the party episode, the mall episode, those ones are
Star Wars, yeah.
Yeah.
House of Blues is also really good.
House of Blues is good. Good Will Hunting is good.
Oh yeah, definitely. The Scribbles episode.
I like One False Movie.
Oh god, what is the one with it's the one where they put is it BlueTube where they put Mr. Herman's video on the internet? No, World Wide Wabbit. Wabbit.
Yeah.
That one's pretty funny as well.
That's a good one.
Is that recast fodder? BlueTube versus World Wide Web.
Maybe. I haven't seen BlueTube in a long, long time.
I think, if I remember correctly, it's where Blue makes this giant like wooden water slide in Foster's, and he uploads a video of it to the internet, and it goes viral because he like gets completely wrecked in the water slide, and everyone finds it funny that he's like miserable. Is there an episode of Foster's where Blue like doesn't cause property damage to Foster's?
No, yeah. I think the answer to that is there an episode where he's not in? Maybe one of the shorter episodes.
But is he in Little Piece?
I don't know. You just saw it.
I think he is in Little Piece, but barely.
Mm-hmm.
He might not even have a speaking role in that episode. But
okay. All right. Well, I heard that you had some trivia for us.
I do have some trivia. And if you've seen Good Will Hunting in recent memory, then you might be good at this. But basically, what's going to happen is I'm going to describe the creator of a certain imaginary friend, and once describing them, it's going to be Pieguy guessing first, and then Tom, you're going to have to describe, or you're going to have to give me the name of either the imaginary friend or the person that created them.
Okay.
All right, here's the first prompt. This person created an imaginary friend that is in many ways a polar opposite to the creator. While they are exuberant and cheerful, their imaginary friend is much more reserved and respectful. This imaginary friend takes their job very seriously.
Oh.
All right, Pie, who do you think this is?
Should I say the imaginary friend or the creator?
Or both.
All right. Well, it's Madam Foster and Mr. Harriman.
Yeah.
That is correct. Yeah, so you'll notice these are kind of vague. I don't know how good you'll be at these.
Vague? That was... all right.
Well, I could have used words like posh, or I could have made like a carrot or rabbit pun.
What other character what other imaginary friend has a job on that show?
Frankie. No, she's not a friend. Never mind.
What?
She's a real
according to the
person.
internet.
Oh no.
I mean, each friend has like their own function, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, all right, you guys both have 1 point. Let's move on to prompt number 2. Although not directly mentioned in the show, this person created their imaginary friend based on things they witnessed on a deserted island, like a life raft and palm trees. This imaginary friend was later discovered
It's
by
Coco.
scientists.
It was Dexter and Mandark.
That is correct. Yeah, this is Coco. They don't. I don't even think they directly show or like name who created Coco, but they show who discovered her.
I forgot about that.
But yeah, that is a really cool reference. I know that they reference Dexter's Lab a few times. Same with Powerpuff Girls. Like even if you look at Frankie's shirt, she has the 3 girls on them. Yeah. All right, cool. You guys both have 2 points. Let's move on to number 3, and of course this one's the gimme. This person is short and wants to get better at a certain sport. They created this imaginary friend to help them with the sport.
Oh, Jordan Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Jordan Michaels, and he created Wilt.
Yeah.
Notoriously from the special Good Wilt Hunting, which is very dear. All right, prompt number 4. This is a very fierce but compassionate police officer. They created their imaginary friend to scare away
Eduardo.
evil people.
Yeah.
Come on, dude. Like.
All right, that's correct. And her name is Nina Valarosa,
Oh right.
also from Good Wilt Hunting.
Yep.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
she appears later. I think.
You guys both have 4 points, 4 for 4.
Hey, no, he got Dexter and Mandark wrong.
Well, yeah, but he said Coco before.
Oh, fair enough.
You guys are both 4 for 4. Maybe this will throw you guys off. I don't know. Maybe I'm just really bad at making trivia. Let's find out. All right. This is a little girl with braces and a lot of energy. Her imaginary friend shares a lot of her energy, but
Goo and cheese.
that is incorrect. Well,
Oh, that's right.
Tom, you want to take a stab at this?
Was it Max Neighbor?
It's
Well,
I know.
I'm not going to give you the point, Pie, because of what you said. Because you said
But-
cheese and goo.
it's Cheese and Louise, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, that's fine.
All right. Well, I guess I'll leave you both at 4 out of 5. That's 80%. That's good.
Okay.
That's a B.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you very much for being on, Tom. Where can you be found on the internet?
I can be found on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr at TommyPQM, and also YouTube.com/TommyPQM is my personal channel that I upload on sometimes, but I'm mostly on the Roundtable, doing Let's Talk with Tom and the Runaway Club, so...
And that stuff will be down in the description.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and PIEGUYRULZ out.
Catch you guys next time.
See ya!